Hey there, my name's Niandra and this VOD was sent to me by the Babby Nick. During round 2 the footage gets a little glitchy and the video ends early, plus I thought Nick played pretty well, so this video will mainly focus on the first round. Also, thanks to my buddy Chris for going over the VOD too and picking up quite a few things I didn't.
Damage increased.
One thing we noticed is, a few times, Nick rapidly flicks between damage boost and healing. This might be personal preference, like maybe some big Mercy does play this way, but I'm not a big fan of this. If you are gonna do it, be cautious, as it could reduce the value you get from both, because of how quickly you're swapping. Nick leaves line of sight for 3 seconds and their beam connection is very briefly broken. Not an issue here, but could be in a fight, and I noticed similar things later on, which I will be talking about. Nick's first death is coming up, and one thing Chris mentioned to me is that they press space after pretty much every Guardian Angel. This gets Nick in trouble a few times as they push themselves too far.
Need a peek off edge.
You can argue that an ally could have saved Nick by peeking, but ideally you don't want to put yourself in this situation in the first place. Also remember, you can cancel Guardian Angel, and doing so before going off the edge could have helped too.
Watch out for maybe a Pharah ult and probably an Ana ult. Oh, nice.
If Nick wanted to res Zarya here, they could have done so by not using Angelic Descent so much and letting themselves fall faster, which is often okay to do. Pretty minor, but Reaper Wraith forms out of the point, and Nick unintentionally follows. Reaper doesn't notice, but this could have been punished. A bit mixed on this. The res wasn't the best, but not the worst either, because Nick's team still has the point. It allows them to get a decent amount of ticks as other allies funnel back at the expense of possible feeding. An alternative play would have been to just kind of crouch spam and dump pistol shots into Roadhog for a potentially solid amount of ult charge.
Okay, yeah, him is AFK.
Unfortunately, one of Nick's allies goes AFK and briefly disconnects. Luckily, the team does have some time to work with, and it's early enough in the round that they can recover from this.
I'm being attacked.
Probably.
Heilstrahl aktiviert. I've got you.
Nick flies to Lucio. They press space and end up behind the point while allies are still on the other side. So from here,
Are we gonna throw now?
to about here, Nick can only watch Zarya take damage and die because they are positioned too far away to heal.
Sorry, just get out of here.
It is not over yet.
My ultimate is charging. Let me get you patched up.
It is forgivable since the team is a little uncoordinated and Hammond went AFK, but I think Nick held on to Valkyrie for a little too long. I think combining it with Grav this fight could have been really solid. Another frequent issue I've noticed is that Nick will take a few seconds to reposition during a fight and will move in a way where their camera view isn't looking at teammates. At times like this, you really want your beam on allies as much as possible and to just generally know where everyone is. With multiple allies dead, Nick also wants to die quickly, which they can do by falling off, and no enemy would get ult charge from it. However, Nick hovers around and is killed by Reaper, who, if he doesn't already have ult, would get some ult charge from this. Plus, the quicker you die, the quicker you'll respawn and be in sync with allies that also just died. Nick uses Valkyrie and flies in, which is perfectly fine. Nick heals the tanks fighting on point for a second or two.
Make your butt.
They then move out of point to follow their anti-healed Lucio, once again positioning their camera view away from allies in a fight.
Damage increased.
I feel unstoppable. The demon becomes me.
Let me get you back out there.
Nick then has heal mode on friendly Genji who's anti-healed. Don't get me wrong, that Genji is fucked either way, but damage boosting him may have gotten you both some ult charge. Basically, it's just a good habit to pick up anyway. Nick walks off point and immediately steps back on, placing them in front of like 3 enemies. I assume Nick did this to contest, but friendly Wrecking Ball is around and they didn't have to go so deep. Hiding outside the point for a second may have been the better play because allies are coming back from spawn and may have been able to provide fly paths to reposition.
0 to 1. 2 1. Capture the objective. Please move behind the barrier. Enemies found. Preparing to heal.
After the Moira orb passed, Nick probably should have just stuck on damage boost.
Reaper.
Nick calls out the Reaper, but does so as Widow is brought down to 25 HP. Nick saw Reaper a few seconds earlier approaching a friendly ally, and that's when they should have called it out. The earlier your team is aware, the earlier they can respond.
Where does it go? Shout, push back up.
Taking control of the objective.
I can't resist still. Reaper behind. On our Widow.
Yeah, there you go, that call out was much better.
I'm 80% to Valkyrie.
You needed a goddess.
Can you talk?
Pulse volley charging!
Warning. Engaging.
Damage increase.
No one can hide from my sight.
Okay, I'm Valkyrie.
This would be your
Although Nick's allies are a bit spread out, I think this Valkyrie was fine, and I probably would have done the same here.
Where does it hurt?
This kill on fire is also super nice.
Clear. I need a pack. Let me get you patched up.
behind the barrier.
Oh no. I should have predicted that.
Ah man, I've had a death similar to this one and unlucky. You can hear footsteps after Reaper kills the Roadhog, which could indicate he is still in there. There was also a good few seconds left on Roadhog's respawn timer. Maybe Reaper would have thought Nick wasn't going to bother and walk away if they'd left it till a bit later. Nick just needed to play more cautiously and slowly.
You still have point?
Damage amplifier.
I can't see you.
I feel like camera positioning could have been more fluid here. Sometimes Nick will focus on one ally and lose track of the others around them.
Increase.
Nick follows Roadhog so they can keep attending to him and goes through the building, but there's indications that enemies are in it too. Chris suggested that going this way to get to friendly Roadhog would have been both safer and quicker as there was so much going on the other way.
Dead. Watch out for Winston ult, Nano, maybe Huggle, probably Pharah ult, probably Deagle. We'll probably have
Should be at peak performance level. I'm here. Almost ready. Let's get you back out there.
Nick flies to Lucio and presses space, which moves them far away from other teammates like Orisa. This res was definitely questionable. Nick may have been able to use the Orisa shield nearby and shimmy between each sides, which would have been better than nothing. Also, note that friendly Roadhog is currently dead. Be cautious with reses where you're still down in numbers and your team doesn't have the point, it can easily lead to staggering.
Beginning.
The video then cuts off there, so in conclusion, Nick's team was a bit unorganised, but there was still some things they could have done differently. The main areas for improvement are 1. Awareness. Nick should aim to be more aware of teammates and their positioning. This can be achieved by simply being more cautious with how the camera is angled. As Nick focuses on one ally, it feels like they lose track of others, so working on stamping out tunnel vision could help too. 2. Time spent repositioning. Occasionally, Nick will take a few seconds to reposition themselves, and this can be okay. Sometimes you will want to do this, but they need to be cautious of allies while doing so. Often, you cannot afford to lose beam connectivity during a fight. Your allies constantly need you. And lastly, just general restraint. Just because you can res or super jump or whatever doesn't mean you have to. Anyway, that's all from me this week. If you want a VOD reviewed, it is being done via my Discord, but I'm only taking a couple every so often as to not get overwhelmed. Thank you so much for watching, have a good one.